25/8 is in the business of time. We help leaders of small and medium-sized businesses work smarter, not harder, so they feel like they have an extra hour in the day and day in the week. Go from don't know what I don't know to I can't miss this show, as we talk proven strategies, practical tips and insider insights from a diverse range of industry leaders. Make time to grow your capabilities and confidence with 25/8. This week, we make time for Suji Sanjeevan. She is the co-founder and director of Brandscent and founder and creative director of Light and Glow. Doctor turned alchemist, Saji pitched on Shark Tank and regularly speaks, educates and advocates to help other aspiring entrepreneurs. As a founder and entrepreneur herself, Saji has built a diverse career that spans manufacturing, service and now medtech industries. Starting with a product-driven business, she has navigated the complexities of innovation and scalability, expanding into service offerings and adapting to evolving market needs. This transition has taught her the importance of agility, innovating not just products, but in business models to remain competitive and relevant. Welcome, Saji.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me.
There's so much we want to unpack today, but let's get started with how this all started. I often see the tagline, Doctor turned alchemist. Talk to us about your journey there.
Sure, of course. So I was 36 weeks pregnant with our second son.
Wow.
And when we had our first child, we knew that something had to change. Both Jiva and I were in the medical field. We were working at Royal Children's Hospital. Myself predominantly in research. I kind of left medicine and went into research. Jiva was in the thick of it in allergy. And the lifestyle was very difficult. We don't have family here. They're back in England. Having one child was hard enough. And with the second on the way, we knew something had to change, but I had no idea that business was about to start. So fragrance and how fragrance makes you feel, the mood it creates is something that I've loved for many, many years. And so when I was just dabbling in scents and I created something for my son's baby shower, and lo and behold, the candles that I created, friends loved it. They were like, oh, you should begin a business. And I was like, there is no way. I'm 36 weeks pregnant. I'm not going to get into it. Don't even know the A, B, or any foundations. But what I did know that I had a passion for design. I'd always loved design, and had I been given the choice early on, I probably would have stepped more into that creative industry. But now I had time on my hands and I was creating designs for packaging and candle scents, layering fragrances. And that's really where Light and Glow came. It was never meant to have legs because it's such a saturated market. And when you think about it, it's an easy industry to get into. But I did give myself a target, and I thought, nevertheless, if I am starting in business, I want to set myself a target. Started December 5th, and I said by January 5th, if we 10x'd what we'd invested, which is $237, and that was it, then we might be onto something, especially in such a saturated field. We did that and more. So at this point, Jiva said, well, it seems like you're loving, you've got some time off. Why don't we start to expand? And the first port of call was local community. So start small and hit the market, get in front of as many customers as possible. And that's what we did. What was a small business was starting to become a brand. People were starting to sit up and notice Light and Glow. And what we did differently at that time was a wooden wick candle. In a saturated field, we found our point of difference and our storytelling. Its moods, it's how it makes you feel. That's how we were explaining it. And people really loved that. And within 18 months of the business growing, we've got a 2-story house. The ground floor was full of boxes everywhere. I mean, I'd lose a child in a box. So it was crazy. We tried the garage. And then in 2017, we moved into our first warehouse, which is very small. It was 100 square meters. Nothing fancy, but it did the job. We'd had staff at this point. And every 2 years we moved warehouses, and the brand just started to snowball. We started in Facebook groups, social media. Then we did markets that were within Melbourne, Victoria, and then we headed out to Canberra and Sydney. And that's really where it started.
Wow, that's amazing. It is so incredible. Like you say, there's a lot of companies, a lot of businesses that are in this space, but then really being able to pinpoint a differentiation. Talk me through, what does that actually mean in terms of the wick? And also then in those early stages, what do you think got that traction to enable you to 10x in that initial period to go, right, this is going to work?
We knew that we needed to have a product that was different. So it needed to stand out. I'm starting a business. I need to do the research. Let's see what's happening in places that are setting the trends. So look to Europe, look to the US. And that's where I came about the wooden wick candle. So it's a painted in FSC certified wooden wick. We were starting with sustainability because that was really starting to pick up traction. And the wooden wick was a very novel concept in Australia. People really hadn't heard of it. So we did have a difficult time initially getting the messaging across, getting people to understand, why should I not burn a cotton wick candle? Why should I use a wooden wick candle? But we knew there were benefits. So let's start to explain it through benefits. So there's a longer burn, there's a cleaner burn, there's an auditory sensation. So we're tapping into more than just the sense of smell. And visually, it was appealing. People buy with their eyes when they're walking past. So the designs that I was creating, even though there were seasonal campaigns, in December it was Christmas, and in January, February it was summer, tapping into that summer. We'd only invest a small amount of money because we didn't really want to increase that risk. So with that, we took it to market. And then there was the feedback, sometimes unsolicited, but feedback is great feedback. And then there's bad feedback. I actually prefer, negative feedback because it allows growth. It allows us to go back to the table and start to change things and better the product itself. And that's really how we cut through the storytelling and also consistently showing up. And that was on socials at the time. We had used Facebook, a little bit of Instagram, but consistency was main. We were consistently showing up on social. We were also consistently showing up in person. And we were putting a face to the brand, something that was different at that time. A lot of the brands, your regular high street brands, you wouldn't know who the founder was. And as I mentioned earlier, the sustainability of this wax being UK sourced. It was soy wax, the wicks being FSC certified, and the oils being made here in Australia. At that time, we had a manufacturer was manufacturing the oils for us, but we knew exactly what was in there. So when someone asked us, we could explain it in ways that other brands couldn't. That was really our point of difference, and we ran with it. We absolutely hammered it home when it came to messaging.
And I really love what you were saying there about talking to the benefits. So you knew what was a differentiation, but for your customers, the audience, you're talking to them about what that meant for them. And I think that's a real key in trying to, especially when you need to educate the market because you're doing something that's quite different, educating them in a way that shows why this is beneficial to them in the long run is there. And sustainability aspect and the research that you conducted beforehand shows that you know your products. You were, I'm sure, showed that you were really passionate about what you were doing.
Yeah.
And you did this at home, essentially?
I did, yeah. It started kitchen benchtop, and I think I posted a video on Facebook back in 2016. And you'll see we had a friend of mine who was a photographer came out, just 12 candles, 24 candles just on the kitchen benchtop. Then we set out trestle tables in the garage because we were now pouring, tens, hundreds. It was incredible because we started to increase the offering as well. So when we initially started, we had just one size and I think 6 fragrances. We started to use that feedback that I mentioned, those customer feedback loops, and go, okay, I hate vanilla. So I didn't obviously have vanilla in that first 6 fragrance, but it's extremely popular. It's one of the most popular scents. So obviously I had to listen to what the customers. And this was something that I talk about now, is really taking yourself out of the business, your personal preferences out of the business, and start to think your audience, what do they want? And then colors of jars, what was trending, but also what are people drawn to? And so we had options for different people, options of sizing. So taking that initial minimal viable product and now expanding on it, but still making sure that I guess we're mitigating risks when it comes to producing them.
And still keeping it simple, essentially, but
absolutely,
having that variation. And by which point you would have had your baby? Is this?
Yes. Yes. He came 4 weeks after the business. So 5th of December I started. He came 5th of January. So I was navigating a 4.5-year-old and a newborn baby at the time.
Yeah. So we often talk about business being another baby, and
Absolutely.
you've got 2 babies, and for anyone that isn't a parent, the first few months, the first couple of years, I would say, are probably one of the most challenging times. How mentally were you able to put passion, put yourself into these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it was, because I was so passionate about the designs and the scents. That's what kept me going. Had this been something that I had to do, not wanted to do, it would have been a different story. So every time my newborn was asleep, I'd be thinking, or even when I'm feeding, like I'm paying attention to my child at the time, and I was doing this so that I can be around. When I had my eldest, I actually had to go back to work at 4.5 when he was 4.5 months. So that was a real. It was very difficult. Here I was with him. He was all, and when I went to meetings, business meetings, he was with me. I was, taking him with me, which society allowed that. So, which is great. But I have to say, Jiva really stepped up. So I don't do selling. I'm very much an introvert. So when he said, let's do events and markets, I was like, well, only if you're happy to. I'm not going to. So we're very yin and yang, and that's helped us sustain this business journey together. So he's a very people's person. So he was the extrovert. He loves to explain things to people. So people loved him. It was, he was nicknamed the candle man every time. And having a guy selling candles was something that was always questioned. They were like, that's really bizarre, but it was a talking point. But I, on the other hand, would be working on that creative aspects, and you'd be surprised, newborns sleep quite a bit. And as a first-time mum with my eldest, I struggled a lot. But so whereas with my second son, it was a routine and making sure I had routine, he had routine, and it seemed to work. But you manage somehow, you make it work.
I think you're superhuman, a superwoman, Saji,
Gosh.
but you don't give yourself enough credit. It's amazing. What point did Jiva say, I'm going to step in too? This business is something more than that we initially thought. What were those conversations that you both had to make the decision and commitment, essentially?
Absolutely. Business isn't easy. It doesn't sleep. Like you said, it's like another baby. It's constant. It's always you need to be on, and things can go wrong at a drop of a hat. At this point, we were 15 December we'd started. We'd moved into our first warehouse in 2017. I'd had staff at the point, so Jiva helping out here and there was great some evenings and weekends. By about 2019, we were really expanding. We were doing events interstate in Sydney, Canberra, which Jiva was doing, and it was really he was starting to struggle with that balance. So in December 2019, we decided that we're going to stop events and we're going to step into the world of B2B. At this point in time, we'd focused on direct to consumer, that B2C. We'd set up our online store. We dabbled a little in B2B, but we came unstuck because our initial way of doing things was volume pricing. So it was an affordable luxury, but we'd priced ourselves out of the market for B2B. So we had to go back. We had to go back to the drawing board, rework this product. How can we do it differently so that now we're going to have to increase our prices for the consumers to make that retail aspect, diversifying the revenue. And so we changed our jars, we incorporated retail ready packaging, and we stepped it up a little bit in that aspect. And people didn't mind so much. We had a real loyal following, and it was incremental price increases. We kept our profit margins small so that we worked on volumes. So as you can see, we've now got consumer and we've got retail. I needed help, and I needed help at the top end of the business and the leadership side. And 2020, as we know, started to unravel with the bushfires. Initially, we thought that was the worst of it. And then obviously COVID hit. And needed all the time within his work. He was at the Alfred at this point. So it was hectic. And I said, Jiva, I really need help here. And that was mid to late 2020 is when he stepped out of the medical field and into Light and Glow. But also we were conceptualizing and delivering Brandscent. So we diversified our streams, but we could diversify further. We were doing B2B corporate through Light and Glow. We were just selling Light and Glow products to corporates. We were branding them simply, but we realized there was a completely new revenue, but even a completely new business in that. And that's really where Brandscent started 2020. And when we now had two entities, I need someone to head one entity and I headed the other. And so I'd say around late 2020 is when he completely left medicine. Whether he wanted to, I don't know, but he does love what he does. But I was loving what I was doing.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? And such a transformational time, I think, for a lot of people. But quite the step as a family unit as well to make that commitment. Did you have any advisors, or did you have anyone around you at the time that helped you sort of think through these processes before making that commitment?
And as I mentioned, when I stepped into the world of business, I had no idea what cash flow meant, what was KPIs, any of those acronyms that people would throw at you. They're absolutely puzzled. So I knew that I had to build foundations. As with any good business, building a solid foundation And I believe that's through education. You absolutely need to arm yourself with information. You don't need to be completely immersed in it, but you need to be able to keep your staff accountable if they're taking on that role and you're outsourcing. So in around 20, our local council have been phenomenal. I stepped in and did a pilot program that they had, and it was 4 months with a business coach where they got themselves into the nitty gritty of the business and started to help us. Having someone that you can be very open with, it's almost like a business psychologist, that you can talk things through and go, is this going to work? How is this going to work? Or just to brainstorm, just to take it out of here and put pen to paper, I think is extremely important at every aspect of business, whether you're a startup or a founder or scaling.
I think so too. And actually the numbers, Xero, the software company, did a report, and it showed a correlation between those that paid for a business coach or business mentor and their success rate. So the point at which they paid was where that you saw the revenue increase. So it's quite interesting that that you say the same thing. Just thinking about that moment where you brought staff in as well, that's also a scary point. You're not just responsible for a business, you're sort of responsible for these other humans. So with the staff, what was the important thing for you in getting people in at that early stage, and what were your main learnings from that?
Sure. Our very first staff was to help with labor. It was the manual work, which could be easily taught. And Alana was our very first staff. She was helping wicking the candles, and I was still mixing and pouring. It was that manual labor that I had to outsource. It was impossible for me to continue doing that. And we did that very early on but as we've grown, our next level was awareness building. So something else that I outsourced was someone to look after our socials. But they needed to be on site. They were filming and taking pictures that we were posting. So the tasks that, as much as I loved, as a small business owner, when you start, you're trying to do everything. I had to really put a roadmap out, prioritize what are the things that I could do and what are the things I can outsource. And even within that, what's a must have, what's a should have, what's a nice to have. And then hiring. We grew in staff quite quickly as we moved into the warehouse, production staff, social media. We outsourced our accounting. In the first couple of years, we buried our head in the sand and thought it would kind of go away. But you soon realize, actually, no, that is the most important part of a business. The first few years was very much about learning the ins and outs, what's important, what you need to monitor very closely, because that financial side can get away very quickly. And especially when you move from essentially a hobby sort of business, working at a home where you don't have overheads, to suddenly having not just a warehouse, you're talking about bills, external bills, insurance, workers' compensation, superannuation for your staff. There's so many things that come to it. And with our staff, it's always been about culture add. Someone who can add something a bit different to our workforce. It's not about a culture fit. I know a lot of organizations talking about fitting into what we have. I've always been about adding to what we have in a different way so we can start to think outside the box.
Love that. I really love that. And I was thinking about the difference, and I know we could talk about this a bit later, but the difference between different job markets or employment markets or even business markets. And in the UK, it's quite normal for you to be able to transition between different sectors, different jobs, because they see the transferable skills. However, when I first came to Australia, there was a real sense of you need to have done the exact job in the exact way in order to get this job. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, because you're just going to get the same person doing the same thing. And then how are you going to make it better? And in a way, it's the same thing. Okay, well, you've got to fit our culture. So, this is just who we are. But culture is still important. But I love that culture add is, adding to how can they enhance or make better. One of the things is finding staff. Once you've got your sales sorted, finding the right people generally tends to be the next challenge for business owners. How did you do that? How did you find the right people?
Absolutely. And I can't say I've got it right all the time, and I can't still say I've got a tap on. But in the initial stages, it was very basic because I didn't have the budget, or at least the business didn't have the budget, because I was very focused that any money that came into the business first couple of years just got cycled into growth. But I didn't want to risk myself and put my own personal money into the business because we didn't know where it was going at that time. And especially early stages. I put it out to the local community, and you get a vibe for people when you meet them and you see them and you trial them. That's really how it started for us. But then soon after, as the business grew in the last few years, I do have people in HR that I tap into and talk to them, not within the organization, but externally, and say, look, I'm now looking to hire for administration, or I'm looking for a marketing manager. What's the best way? What's the best way to do it? So having essentially clarity is extremely important. So expectations are met, but also there's no burnout, making sure that I'm very clear in what I'm looking for in my staff, what I'm expecting from them, but also giving them free rein to be able to bring that culture and value add to the business.
Yeah, awesome. How, obviously, the organization as it is today, how do you work on culture? It's not just the sort of hiring stage. What do you guys do to build that culture within the businesses?
Absolutely. I took a leadership course 2 years ago because I knew that leadership starts within. Unless I am exemplifying what I'm expecting, then there's a problem at the top. So I knew that I had to do that. And we have huddles and we have weekly meetings with all the staff within different departments. But then every fortnight we bring the departments together. So the manufacturing is speaking to the marketing, and we're all a unit of sorts. So I stopped calling it a family a long time ago because I think that blurs the lines, but we're a team. We're working for the same goal. And then within the teams, I will have, with each person, we have huddles, 5 minutes if there's anything that you need to go first thing Monday, and another one at the end of the week, whether that be a Thursday or Friday, so that there is always constant communication. I think when the communication is flawed, that's really when things start to unravel, and it can unravel very fast for us. And then leadership within the teams and the organization. And something that I've always been extremely important with is being socially conscious. So we've worked with places like Foundation House, where we've had people who couldn't get that first job. Foundation House get refugees, people fleeing countries, domestic violence. If they want their first job, or they want a job after a long sabbatical, we provided that 3-month program, and some of them stayed on much longer. Just making sure that we're doing things consciously, but also being commercial so that we can continue to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible, and something I didn't know about the businesses, and I think that in it of itself, we talk about brand and making a difference in terms of the design, but actually your values and what you're doing. It's a really important aspect to a business that you want to work for, and I think it can attract the right people as well because of what you stand for, which is
Absolutely.
great. Any further learnings about that recruitment process? What would you say are the sort of top things or values that you might look out for in a candidate that would then go on to successfully stay within the unit of either business?
So for us, it's that reliability. And I always say in the interview process, or once we've got to that first stage of hiring, communication is important. I'm always available. If there's anything that you have trouble with within your team or within personally, just call me aside. Say, Suji, I need 5 minutes. I need to talk about this. I look after the hiring aspect. So I work with the staff. I remember the lady who heads my manufacturing at the moment. The one thing she said to me, Suji, I looked you up. This is a company I really want to work for. That's all I'm going to say. And that's how she closed her interview. She goes, what you stand for, the values of your company. And I realized that that's what we were building. So people were attracted to the business because they wanted to work for. I do a lot of work in the DI aspect for small businesses, multicultural businesses as well. So it's that value. And then as people are drawn to that value, you start to align yourselves. And then also, it's not about having the skills per se. So I've hired students before who are second year students or first year students, marketing students, my social media. They don't have the skill set yet. And that's the operative word. It's allowing them to come into the role, but they have ideas. So we can work with that. What is a core set of skills or a core set of ethos within them, we can work with to build on. So we put them through as an organization through courses to excel what we've learned over the 9 years. We're imparting with our staff as well.
I think
so
that's
it's like continuous
incredible.
education.
Obviously, I think your investment in education is very honourable, given my background, but it's almost that you're looking for those attributes. It's not about the skill. I've always said you can teach anyone anything, but having that program with graduates where you're mentoring, where you're passing
Yeah.
that on, you're developing their skills, as long as they've got the right attributes, is
An
another
attitude. Yeah.
great way of getting people in. And I've seen successful businesses, as you say, and they stay on and go on to
Bigger and better
be
things.
successful. I remember way back in my early days as a manager of a company, and I had to choose between two candidates. One had got a degree in Oxford and a year's experience, and one had packed shelves in Tesco, which is a UK supermarket. But the enthusiasm, the passion, and the research that the guy who packed the shelves had far outbalanced him against the other candidate, and he went on to be my best salesperson within the company because of that. And I think you can't teach that.
Absolutely, yeah.
It has
Because
to
we
be
had one
natural.
story with Foundation House at Lachey. Ali, he fled from Africa. His father was no more, which is mum and 4 sisters. And I remember the first time the organisation brought him over to us, and he wouldn't look me in the eye. And so I knew that obviously I wasn't the right mentor for him within our organisation. So I paired him up with Jiva. By the time he finished 3-month program, at 6 months, he was doing the sales at High Point for our candle stores. He was flirting with the girls. It was incredible just to see someone so closed off due to what society had put him through, but now to really come out of his shell. We didn't have a full-time position at that time, and we still keep in contact. He moved into Bunnings. He heads a department in Bunnings, and he's just thriving. So to take someone, if someone hadn't taken that chance with him, what could have been, whereas when you start to provide that support, what unravels is incredible.
That's just, it's such a great story, and a great story of transformation and how you can impact and really that faith in humanity and what you guys, both yourself and Jiva, can do to help someone transform. I want to come back to the other work that you do in diversity and inclusion as well, Saji, but just getting back to business. It's been quite the journey. You've grown to a particular size. I start to see you now in internationally in different countries, and talk to me about what's next. What does it look like for both businesses in the next 12 months to 5 years?
Sure. With Brandscent, what started off as essentially a branded merchandise, we realized that we were still a dime a dozen. There were so many of us out there that can easily do that. But what was missing was taking that product-based business to a service-based business. So we started to think outside the box. It's really about iteration of the product and refining the product. So within Brandscent, we started to refine the service. And by 2022, we bought the scent creation within in-house. So we projected ourselves now as a fragrance house because we now had the skills to create scents and layering those scents. So we now work with great global brands in terms of creating scents for them. But that didn't just come from a LinkedIn connection or anything like that. It's building genuine relationships. So a relationship that we had with Light and Glow, just as a campaign that we did with Amex, very small, we could have just forgotten about it. But what we did was we built genuine relationships with the people that we met, right from the marketing person who liaised with us to the makeup lady and all of those. But that led us to introductions to now the VP of Amex, and we're working with them to create scent. So it is that stage by stage, but actually deep listening. Sometimes we're very superficial in trying to network and collect people, but we don't engage in a meaningful, deep way. So with those business, that's what we did. And now Brandscent is going global. Jiva's heading out to London Tech Week and Viva Tech in Paris to showcase what we can do through Brandscent as that starts to scale and take on a global aspect. Light and Glow, on the other hand, that I tend to look after more the packaging design, has stepped into not just home fragrance, but personal fragrance. So we've further developed the product offering, and we're also going export. So we'd always thought UK, being home, would be the first port of call. US, I'm kind of glad I didn't do US, but what we realized quickly was, and this is the agility of small business, is that India was peaking. The interest and the roadmap between Australia and India was starting to pick up speed and attention. So we switched gears. We started to look into India. We worked with Global Victoria, utilizing local and now government connections that anyone can absolutely tap into. And we said, how can we navigate this path into India? And so last year in December, I sent Jiva, as you do, because he loves to go out, to Cosmoprof, which is a beauty expo that brings in, thousands of people. And that happened in Mumbai, and it was happening in December. When we found out about it, I think it was late October. And I was like, how are we going to make this work? We made it work. You absolutely make it work as a bit small business. We headed out there, and we've already signed on a distributor, and we're launching it in India. So it came out of nowhere because we wanted to be first to market, one of the first Australian fragrance and beauty in terms of fragrance brand to personal fragrance to be out in India. And then the next protocol is we spoke to people. We do a lot of research at Global Victoria, and they said, look, right now, London, England probably isn't the best way to go. Have you looked into the Middle East? Because the margins are great and there's an ease of trans. So that's what we're looking into. Being able to be open to conversations, listening, and then acting on that has really allowed us to grow over the 9 years. We're hitting 10 years this year with Light and Glow, Brandscent 5 years, and now we want to go a full circle. So taking medicine, scent, and tech, which is where the future is, and bringing it together. We've established relationships with La Trobe and Monash University. Yeah, we're tapping into a bit of research to develop that medtech side of the business. So another company is on the horizon.
I think it's addictive once you get started, especially successful. And against journey, and one that challenges initial assumptions. I will go to the UK. It makes sense. We know that market, and then looking and being agile enough to recognise that there was other opportunities as well. How have you adapted your brand and even messaging value proposition for the Indian market?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, that culture. So that's something that features very much in when you do go into export, because the scents that people are more accustomed to or more attracted to are different. The visuals are different. The market that you're targeting may be around 60% the same as to everywhere globally, but there is that market difference. We did, while Jiva was out there at Cosmoprof, we did a lot of research. It wasn't just exhibiting, it was doing research, attending meetings with the big brands out there that had the beauty platforms like the Meccas and Sephora's that we have here. They have their equivalents, the Nika, the Tira. So we went out there, met with them. I say we because Jiva went out there and met them and did that research. And so now with the distributor, we're developing a completely new line for them. We're targeting cultural festivities around what's really important. And with Brandscent, we're tapping into two big things. Obviously, in India, there's Bollywood and there's IPL. So with Brandscent, we've already worked with Sporting Facility Western United here, dealing with AFL. So, you know what? There's a way in for Brandscent through IPL. So we thought, let's take both brands to India. One will navigate the IPL, which will give us quick awareness. And that way, Light and Glow can piggyback off that, because we don't have the crazy budgets to do or hire a Bollywood star to star in one of our kind of showcases, which is going to take off. So we've got to be very strategic in the way that we market our business with minimal budget. There was a sports NXT event that happened a couple of months ago here, put on by Global Victoria. They had global business representatives from that sports industry here. Jiva made it a point to ensure that he was there at that time, met with managers of IPL clubs, nurtured those relationships, and now we're establishing a clear roadmap into the country to launch both brands.
Yeah, amazing. It's testament to your smarts. It's basically you're preparing. You're not just flying by the seat of your pants and going, okay, let's give it a go. Yeah, it's really understanding the market, understanding the people, and then adapting your approach based on that, and having a bit of a plan of action to follow to make that successful, and have, I'm sure, metrics in place that you can measure so that you can adapt that along the way. We've taken a small baby, and now this baby is growing, and it's a bit further away that we have to travel to look after it. What does this mean for you, Saji and Jiva, and your parents, your kids, your boys are in school? Have you talked about what this means in terms of your commitment to the businesses and what you need to create to ensure your vision comes true?
Yeah, as you mentioned, with 3 businesses potentially on the horizon, we've got time management is a skill that I've absolutely acquired and nailed. And so when I go into work, I'm working from home today, but when I go into work, I'm dropping the kids off at school. I'm making sure I'm present because I didn't get into business to be busy 24/7, which at times you are, but I also make a conscious choice to ensure that I am dropping them at school, then I'm picking them up at, after school pickup. And if that means I have to do an hour or so of work at home, so be it. But I'm there at every football practice, every game that they're in. And if I miss it, the boys understand, but I'm there 90% of the time and they come with me. When they were babies, they were coming with me. It's really having an understanding community around you, but also a great staff network that we have in terms of they're managing things, they're closing up and doing things, getting on with it, and ensuring that the managers there on site are managing what they need to be doing. And in saying that, it's not that we've got it right. I know this whole podcast we've been talking like I've got it all under control. Absolutely not. It's a mess. We were tracking a couple of 100,000 after COVID behind. We need to claw that back and make sure that like our profit margins are small because we're Australian made. We've remained Australian made. We're conscious of and our social practices, but it doesn't mean that you can't come out of that. And that's why being strategic is important. But Jiva's very analytical, so very left brain. I'm very right brain, but we have very clear cut boundaries. I make executive choices with Light and Glow. He makes executive choices with Brandscent. And in fact, when the medtech comes into play, he will completely come out of Light and Glow and he would move into Brandscent and then the medtech. And so ensuring that we've got a clear pathway, who's responsible for what, who calls the shots here. So there's no bickering, although at times there is in the office, but just clarity. That's a really important word within ourselves, within us as a husband and wife duo working on a business, but also with the staff itself. Having real role clarity has allowed me to do that. A few years ago, I was working around the clock where I'd pick my kids up, take them to the warehouse, and it was mad. And I was like, what am I doing this for? So we started to make some changes to allow that. In saying that, when we set up the warehouse, we had a makeshift camp. We had airbeds upstairs. We had the car parked inside at times because we had to work till 1, 2 o'clock in the night to make sure we've met a deadline. We had a Tim Tam order that needed to go, short staff called in sick. Pull up your sleeves, get in there. We had the kids in there. They'd had taken them out for dinner, and they were asleep in the car. Sounds really bad, but it's what I had to do in those 2 days. It was parked in the warehouse. We were working till 1 o'clock. Like I said, airbeds upstairs. They thought it was great. They were camping somewhere. This is when they were a bit younger, not so much now with a 13-year-old. I think as a family unit, we are great together. And I have an incredible support network, and that's really important. If you don't have someone to talk to, so I go on a walk every Sunday with my best friend who lives around the corner. We start at 7, finish at 9. We vent. She's in corporate, I'm in business. We don't talk about business, but we vent about everything that we've had. And I feel like I start every Monday with a clean slate.
Oh, and I was going to ask you about balance. It's really important to have that space to be able to think clearly. Given your medical backgrounds, you probably are aware of ensuring mental and physical health just as important. I think there's 2 things there that shows that your passion and commitment in those early stages, and it isn't all glamour and when we're building businesses and you just have to get the job done, and your ability to do that grit. And I don't really like the word hustle because I don't think it's that necessarily. I think it's grit. Essentially you need to get the job done and you're going to do it. You're not going to do it to the point that you will break your family. And as you say, that clarity and communication within the unit help that. And walking is one thing. How else does Saji keep balance through the growth of all of this?
Let's just say my kids keep me in check. That's for sure. They give me a reality check every so often. And you said as doctors, we would have everything under control. Absolutely. We're our worst patients. When it comes to healthy eating, I don't have it under control or those kind of things. I'd love to say I do, but time out. For me, one thing I learned halfway through the business is carving out time for your family. So at Christmas, we close for 3 weeks. It's a non-negotiable, phones down, everything down. And we were just doing that once a year in the beginning. Now we've got 4 times a year where it can be not expensive, just a road trip. And the boys love a road trip. We get in there, we drive out to Sydney or Jervis Bay. It's 4 days and we're just out there in nature. I'm not taking my laptop with me. I'm not doing any work. We're selling fragrances and candles. No one's going to, nothing's going to happen if we're not around for a few days. So carving out that time that is separate. I went away to see family, prioritizing that. Sometimes we go, oh, I'm too busy with work, I can't head out that way. And I've unfortunately done that early in the business, and I still regret some of the things I wish I had done. Really prioritizing time with the people that you love, because who are you doing it for at the end of the day? You're doing it for the people you love. And unfortunately, through whether it's corporate or business, sometimes it's those people that see the worst of you. And that's something that's always in the front of my mind when I'm with them, that I also want them to see the best in me. It's not just for the outside world.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's hard sometimes. I remember my husband saying, you're going to have a weekend this weekend, or you're not going to have a husband, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, that's serious. And you think that if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. And again, it's the difference between that grit and the hustle. You don't have to be on fire 100% 24/7. You have to give yourself that time and come back to why you started it, and that flexibility to be with your family or whoever's important to you, or what's important to you. That's really good to know. I love Jarvis Bay as well.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Due to technical difficulties, unfortunately, the interview with Suji ended there. But don't despair. We have a part 2. So we invited Suji back, and you'll find that in another episode of Make Time. We'll hopefully see you in that one soon. Thanks for listening to Make Time, a business podcast by 25/8. If you like the show, please take a moment to write a review and feedback on what you'd like to hear next. If you never want to miss an episode, hit subscribe or follow on your favourite listening channel. If you want to get even smarter, join our newsletter, community, or take one of our programs. Links down below. See you next time.